thank you very much. This is the last panel of the morning, then we'll go for lunch. But let's start very quickly introducing yourselves, if you want to say in one sentence, 10 seconds, who are you, what are you doing at your company, and how you are related to the advertising world. Can we start with you, Peter?
You can. Thank you first for inviting me to the panel. I'm Pete Burroughs and I'm responsible for the advertising integration into DAZN in Europe, Middle East and Africa, which is mostly Italy, Germany and Spain at the moment.
I'm Sinclair. I'm a strategy partner at Carat. I specialise mainly in digital and emerging technology.
I'm Golbere and I'm SVP of Technology for TV Solutions Group at IPONWEB.
Bill Swanson, I'm VP EMEA of Telaria, which are a SSP video management platform.
Fantastic. So let's start straight with you. DAZN. We keep saying there are too many streaming services. They're launching lots every year. Not all of them will succeed. Some suddenly will disappear. ARPUs in streaming services are very low. Subscription revenues are not enough to cover those costs. Why are you launching AVOD? How much money are you planning, or do you think you will get via advertising?
Good question. I think the first bit to answer that in two parts is that DAZN's been around for 3 years now. We were fundamentally an SVOD platform for the first 3 years of our existence.
With how many subscribers? 8 million?
Ooh, good question. Unfortunately, we don't disclose as a private company. We don't need to disclose
you
currently.
You can give us an idea. You mentioned
unfortunately,
recently.
I don't want to sound like a politician, especially at this sort of week of all weeks. But yeah, unfortunately, I won't declare what our subscriber base is. But for the first 3 years, we were a pure SVOD platform, and then the decision was made about this time last year to integrate advertising into the platform. Now that was really there was two reasons behind that. One is that sport and advertising go hand in hand, and in some countries like the US, sport is specifically designed to integrate advertising. So the decision was made that we were, from the start of this year, we were going to integrate advertising in the platform. And to answer the last part of your question around how much money do you think there is to be made within the OTT space, is we believe that as we mature, we'll be pretty similar to any other pay TV sports broadcaster, where advertising revenues will make up between 10 and 20% of the overall revenue mix once we've matured.
So what is going to be your model? Will you have like a pure AVOD full of adverts, no cost, or will you have adverts behind the pay TV wall? What are you planning to do? Yes. Which kind of content will go?
Yeah, exactly. So I think firstly what I'd say is that DAZN's a pretty nimble, commercially nimble organisation. The plan that we're rolling out at the moment is that advertising will appear behind the paywall. We don't make any content available in front of the paywall at the moment. So advertising will appear within the existing subscription service. What we're going to end up doing in the future is open to debate, but I think we'll look at all options as the business model progresses.
And full launch when?
Where have we launched advertising?
When is it going to be ready? I think you mentioned.
Oh right, so yeah, so for this year, we have probably worked with between 60 and 70 advertisers already on the platform in a sort of trial and test type environment. We made the decision to use Google as our advertising platform. That there's a whole load of tech work gone on this year, and Google's going to be rolled out into the platform Q1 next year.
So Q1 next year you are launching with Google. You are expecting 10-20% of your revenues will come from advertising.
That's right.
Let's check next year how
exactly.
it goes.
Check in.
Francis, speaking about streaming services, even companies like Netflix, people keep asking, are they going to launch an ad model? Because obviously they have a lot of debt. They are 10 billion negative in cash for the last 4 years. Yes. But you mentioned something very interesting. Even right now, lots of content in Netflix is supported by advertising, by placement advertising. You gave us very interesting figures. Can you comment more on that model?
So we talk about streaming as a brand new thing, but effectively we've been buying digital video for years through the likes of YouTube, etc. And every streaming service have had to come up with a model to survive. And they seem to, in some way or other, whether it be through sponsorship or whether it be through pre-roll and mid-roll, have to bring on advertisers. if you look at the fine print of original content on Netflix, actually between about 60 and 70% of original content on Netflix already features
60, 70%. That's a very high number.
Yes. So it's already there, and when people say, I don't want to see advertising, we know consumers have ad blocked on digital platforms. I think the likes of Netflix have been really smart in thinking of how do brands provide advertising in ways that are additive to the consumer.
Yeah, in fact, one of the top series at Netflix was La Casa de Papel, Spanish series, Money Heist, and there was Estrella Galicia, the beer, in every single part of that content.
Yes.
So,
and it's quite a good point. I mean, I think everyone assumes that that advertising, when someone says you're going to integrate advertising into your platform, there's a kind of negative connotation with that. But actually now, especially within sport, plenty of endemic sports brands can add IP to a service, and they have good content that actually, if it's delivered in the right way, can be a beneficial experience to the user.
Exactly, and you look at Asia, and a lot of the streaming services are highly developed in Asia, and what they've actually done is work with advertisers to provide contextually relevant advertising, so particularly around sports. Quite often when people are streaming sports in their home, they want to order some food. A lot of the fast food services and delivery services will provide contextually relevant ads, and it won't feel offensive to the consumer.
So we just have to be creative in the new world, and advertisers need to be more creative. So let's speak to Brian and Bill. Maybe Bill, because we talk a lot about Hulu, and I think your company, Telaria, has a lot to do with advertising.
We do, yeah.
Do you want to tell us more what have you done to make them so successful?
Yeah, sure. So Telaria provides the basic technology platform that allows Hulu to programmatically serve ads. So obviously with thousands, millions of streams at any one time and lots of ad units coming up at any particular point in time, they need a platform to control how those ads are served, when they're served, and obviously the most relevant ad, mid-roll, post, and pre-roll. And so we provide the stack that allows that to happen. So using a lot of the type of rules that have been put in place for linear in terms of brand safety and making sure you've got ad slots scheduled so you don't have a Nike advert followed by an Adidas advert followed by a Puma advert. So our technology allows that to happen. And I think going back to one of the sort of key points that I guess was discussing in terms of can there be an advertising funded model? Whilst Hulu does have a subscription service, I think we see around about 70% of their revenues coming from their AVOD type of model. And again, another point is around having type of key content, content that is relevant. But then going back to the earlier points in terms of having type of ad placements, in terms of more type of contextual, I think that's going to grow more and more.
So Bill, you said 70% of the revenues are coming from advertising for Hulu.
Yeah.
So 10 and 20 maybe are too low for this one.
It's a different model, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of live sports that obviously DAZN do. Obviously Hulu not necessarily in the live sport area. I mean, we work with a bunch of publishers as well, broadcasters in the live arena. But again, there's a lot of concern around brand safety in terms of serving programmatic advertising.
Yeah.
But I think as the models evolve and more money moves from TV to digital budgets, or how that works on the agency side is also interesting.
That's a very good question, because of course everyone has a budget, money is limited. All these streaming services like DAZN now entering in the advertising world, Hulu and all these companies, are these putting more threats, more competition in public broadcasters that now advertisers will not maybe have so much money to spend in them? Do we think a move from that budget moving to the new streaming services, and this is competition again for traditional broadcasters?
I mean, I think the power of OTT is in its data, right? So TV advertising has been bought the same way fundamentally for 50 years, which is extrapolated panel-based audience, whereas the beauty of OTT as it continues to grow and the scale is delivered is that it gives the power back to agencies and brands to actually understand more about who's consuming their ads, and the sort of reporting metrics are going to be far greater than what's currently available in the traditional world.
Yeah, and I think I think they can also identify certain audiences, niche audiences across a whole bunch of different channels rather than having to buy against a particular channel. But I'll let, from the agency side, carry on more.
It's about a balance of quality of content and quality of attention. And also there are nuances, market by market. I think we're extremely lucky here in the UK in that we have such high quality broadcast content. So actually, if you look at the themes of people shifting from broadcast over to streaming, it's slightly slower in the UK than other markets. If you look at markets like the Nordics, roughly about 70% of the population actively stream versus broadcast television. So there will be nuances there, and we at Carat look at not only buying the content, but also the quality of attention of eyeballs behind the content. So when someone's looking at a streaming service on their iPhone, what's the difference between that and a lean back moment on TV? So we'll be very much focusing on not only the content, but where are people watching it and what's their mind need.
And an interesting point there, Francis, is that also the ability with OTT is everyone kind of assumes when you talk about AVOD that consumption is on smaller screen devices like iPhones, smartphones, etc., but actually we see in a live broadcast environment 60 to 70% of our audience is coming through a big screen
of course.
TV.
And the smart TV will be the device that will grow the most.
Exactly.
That's a reality.
And then what that gives you the ability to do is then serve your advertising to the device that it's being consumed on and the rates accordingly.
Yeah, I would just
Brian,
say,
yes?
I think if you look particularly outside of sport and you look at entertainment, broadcasters and ad-supported media are pretty much in lockstep with mass marketers. Right? And until there's a solution that you can get mass reach across, if you're looking for a niche audience, great. But to reach a mass audience, the broadcasters still have the upper hand. And if they can consolidate their ability to reach their audience irrespective of how it's played out, the data is interesting. It makes better decisions. It may be more targeted. But the available minutes to advertise continue to shrink, which is going to continue to drive those price up. And there's not that investment in other mass media yet, and there's no real clear signal as to what that gets replaced with.
Also, with all these devices, fragmented audiences, Francis, it must be very difficult with the lack of cross-platform audience measurement to provide real data to advertisers. Is this a big challenge, the fact that people are consuming content in so many devices and it's very difficult to track those audiences, or things have improved a lot and now we know exactly how many people are watching in each device? What is your view on that?
Things are improving, but we know we still have challenges around being paid in BAS and being able to third-party ad serve across different players who use different ad stacks and may not be able to cross-reference the type of data we collect from each. So there's a lot of knitting together still in the marketplace. The MRC has recently done a draft proposal of cross-media measurement, which may give us a kind of benchmark, but I think brands who really understand the space are those who have worked with agencies to build out an understanding of not only the direct data signals, so how many impressions are you getting, what's your reach, but also understanding the audience behavior and the brand awareness on the back end.
And also, I mean, we talk about eyeballs, making the most of money. Companies like DAZN, for example, you arrived to Spain this year, you had MotoGP. In the beginning, 0 viewers, 0 eyeballs. How can you persuade when you go new to a country to get money from advertisers, sponsors? When
I mean, I think you make a great point. Like the single biggest challenge for us, which we still experience now in mature markets and when we launch in new markets, that there is no independent monitoring authority for OTT. So whether it's Barb in the UK, it's Auditel in Italy, it's Kantar in Spain, AGF in Germany, none of these traditional TV measurement organisations, being completely candid, have really got their act together yet to deliver a OTT solution, which therefore makes it difficult for brands and agencies to put a qualitative or quantitative analysis to the audiences that we deliver.
Please, I want this to make interactive, so if anyone has questions, feel free to put hands up so we can interact with anything they are saying, if you agree, disagree, or if you have any question. Any questions now?
No, I just think just another point to add to that is what I see from coming from being a publisher, which actually I used to work at The Independent. Well, that's a good or bad thing, I don't know. But obviously a print publisher that's gone into to digital. I very much see in terms of the way that type of TV is going is obviously the way that print was sold in a certain way, then this whole new world of the type of online websites came up, and then mobile is sold in a completely different way in terms of the CPM basis. And then you're looking at TV, the way it's been sold in terms of linear way, and now that's type of almost becoming digitized as well. So there's definitely lessons to be learned there. And then to Peter's point there as well, there is no real platform that's type of measuring everything consistently. So therefore, from a buyer's perspective, it's not easy to actually know what you're actually buying. So there's a lot of work going on in the industry across, I guess, traditional digital and TV to try and align those. And the more we can all push for that, the better.
And how can you help those niche streaming services, those that are not so popular, they don't have an experience with ad tech, they don't have ad sales houses? Do they have a chance in the advertising world? Can they get money from advertisers if they are small streaming services?
It depends on the quality of what they're streaming, and you can look at publishers to see what that might look like. For instance, the Financial Times and Bloomberg are both business services that sit behind paywalls with advertising. People are willing to pay for that content because they know the quality of content they're getting. For all the niche streaming services, my advice to them would be, when you come to advertisers and agencies, you have to be very sure of what you have that's of benefit to audiences and be able to prove that out to us.
And I think we mentioned this, but we mentioned the challenges about not having enough eyeballs, but what are the advantages of advertising in over-the-top versus in traditional pay TV? What?
I mean, we touched on it briefly at the start, but I think ultimately it's audience and measurement and reporting. As an OTT service, we know exactly who's on our platform, we know exactly what they're consuming at any given point of the day.
You know your fans really well, you know what they want.
Exactly, we know what we're doing, which is not always said about other mediums of advertising.
Another interesting topic all year has been privacy. Privacy, GDPR, some companies having in the spotlight for giving data away and being manipulating during political campaigns and all everything everyone knows.
Too close to lunch to bring up privacy.
Since we are again in a very interesting week. So what is happening with privacy? Is it really privacy GDPR something affecting advertisers? Or despite all the talk about advertising and privacy, as soon as you tell people, do you want to look like, how will you look like in 20 years with wrinkles? You're giving away all your life, your private data, and people say, okay, I don't care, and they give the data away. Have you seen people being more careful giving their data away? Has been this a challenge, or people are still willing to give their data away?
I mean, so we have the CCPA coming in California, and there's a lot of talk and a lot of speculation. But there's a couple of interesting things, and there was research out by Pew last week. It was like 88% of people don't trust that their data is going to be used effectively.
88%?
Of Americans don't trust that their data is going to be held and dealt with in a way that they would find acceptable, right? 73% for government and 88% for commercial industries. So it's not specific to advertising or TV, but I think that there's a general, I think you have GDPR, which is some people say is a more draconian. I think what's going to happen with US legislation is going to become much more draconian because you have the right of individual action will be coming, which means that individuals and companies can sue for damages caused, and there's a lot of pent-up frustration with data breaches, and again, not specific to advertising, but the cost is going to be much more direct, and it's going to be a much more litigious approach than it is in a regulatory framework that's more common in some place like Europe. So I think what you're starting to see if you talk to the brands, including publisher brands, is they're much less willing to claim that they're selling their data, which means that they're giving it to someone for commercial purposes other than their own site. So if you log in to the site, you use it, you show advertising on the site, no problem, right? If you start propagating that data out to a lot of third parties, that's where you have a breakdown in trust. And so the trust goes in proportion to kind of the value of that data. If you go to a site, you sign in, you get a personalized recommendation for sports, fine, you're happy. If you get a personalized recommendation for an ad on site, you're happy. If you get a personalized recommendation on an ad somewhere else based off that data, that's the gray zone. So I think it's unknown, but I think it's going to be a very big driver of consumer behavior, because it will be in brands' best interest in some cases to take advantage of that because of their first-party relationship.
Yeah. Francis, what about here in the UK and other countries? Has this become a big issue?
I think we've seen it much more in the digital space, so all the large digital players have really moved with what the ITO has put out in the last 3 months to say they're not going to share their information across platform. And when we're looking to work with video streamers on behalf of brands, there is a much higher compliance barrier. We want to know how you're collecting data, why you're collecting that data, what you're doing with that data, how you want us to use that data if we feel it is compliant. And it will be not like the old days when anyone can come with a streaming service, but you will have to go through those legal barriers before you work with us in the UK, in Europe, in California, in Brazil.
Anyone from the audience wants to ask something to our friends here from DAZN or Carat, IPONWEB or Telaria? Any question regarding the advertising models? Yes, one question there.
Francis, how many sort of long-tail OTT services could you deal with? Is it easy? Would it just be programmatic, or would it be a problem? Because at the moment there's like, say, 10 major broadcasters, so easy. If there's hundreds of niche OTT channels with bits of audience that you need, does that make your life much harder?
I think, again, going back to my point earlier, it will be the quality of audiences on those niche channels. If we can achieve brand effects against those audiences on those niche channels, we will absolutely work with them. And also it will be nuanced market by market. Like I said, in the UK, we still expect to have very active relationships with broadcasters. In other markets, like if you look at China, it's incredibly fragmented, and we have to work with a number of players in order to get TV advertisements out onto both linear and OTT services.
Very good question. Anyone else? So we speak about a lot before about connected devices, smart TVs. Everyone needs to work with a smart TV company. But there is another device growing a lot. Smart speakers, voice assistants. People are very worried and concerned about voice assistants. We did a survey, and particularly women do not trust voice assistants. They claim they're listening to what you're saying. As soon as you have a conversation, I will have an advert immediately on my phone about Hulu, maybe because we talk or the song. How do you feel? What is the view in the market of digital assistants? Are they being used by advertisers? Is this a new source of learning more about the consumer? Or because of GDPR, everything is very secret and private, they cannot share that data? Who wants to comment on the role of voice assistants?
Well, for voice feels like the new mobile. We'll talk about it a lot before we actually get there. And there was an eMarketer article that came out about 2 weeks ago that said, why are there not as many voice case studies about skills as we expect?
Yes.
If you look specifically at the video streaming market, where voice might play, as you heard earlier about the difficulty in searching for content, certainly voice assistants could come in where you're going, oh gosh, I just want to find XYZ content, and there could be AI on the back end to help you surface that content faster. Also, if you're looking at creativity in streaming services, some of you may remember Black Mirror's Bandersnatch Choose Your Own Adventure last year. You can see where voice assistants might play with that, and how brands could really cleverly insert themselves in there to create content experiences that are memorable. So we don't think that voice doesn't have a role in the market. It just might take a little longer to arrive than perhaps the media says it will.
Great. And I think another topic in the market, in the technology world, is 5G. 5G seems to be disrupting everything, disrupting sports, media, gaming, everything. What about advertising? Will advertisers change their models next year when there are so many platforms? Vodafone has been doing lots of things around 5G, 5G in sports and gaming, as we said. Have you seen already companies approaching you like they're planning to create new models because there will be more interactivity, VR, AR?
Yeah, so from a 5G perspective, obviously it opens up screens to be type of live in effect the whole time, and type of any place, anywhere. So from a company which are focused just purely on top of the video broadcast market, we're actually having more conversations with some of the digital out-of-home businesses because their screens are becoming live screens. I mean, I think the James Bond premiere was previewed in Times Square. That was on a digital out-of-home screen, not a other screen. They're all blending into one. So I think, our perspective, we're definitely seeing that as becoming an opportunity for us as a business. But it's just it's a question of the data points and how they're being bought. But yeah, I definitely think that's going to 5G is just going to push more and more screens to be able to be more relevant for the advertisers.
And more interactivity with that content. Maybe you can buy something that you watch immediately when you're watching a football game or a boxing.
I mean, I think 5G, all it's going to do is facilitate the proliferation of OTT services, because suddenly it becomes easier to access content, whether it be on your mobile phone or on a fixed line broadband. So, and in turn, that's going to drive scale, which in turn will then mean that brands are more comfortable with investing on OTT services because the scale of the audience is going to be bigger.
Brian?
I don't see it happening anytime soon. I mean, because devices aren't out there. We're seeing early stages of things. You also look at evolving broadcast standards where there's backhaul for free-to-air broadcast. I think those start converging where you have a terrestrial signal effectively, but now you have a digital backbone, and that ties in nicely with 5G, so that you have that connectivity and reach a broader population than just kind of the niche deployments now.
We only have 2 more minutes, so I want to dedicate one for questions from the audience. I think the audience are really hungry and they want to go for lunch, although we have a question there. Yes?
Quick one for DAZN. Your new model, you're still paying the same, and the ads are there as well, so it's not hybrid.
Exactly right.
Yes.
For the time being, as it currently exists, you still pay the same and you receive advertising.
Yeah, so same price, everything the same,
Everything's
just some clever adverts inside,
Exactly
not to
right.
upset the audience too much.
Yeah, we're currently we integrate. Our big thing is not to disrupt the consumer experience. So you're watching a live football game, you don't get served ads that will interrupt the experience.
So time for the last question. It's now or never, no? So to close this panel, you are launching Q1 2020. You will have a very good advertising model. What about other streaming services like Netflix? 2020, will they have an AVOD model or a hybrid or a pay model with adverts? What do you think, yes or no, and why?
Almost feels like you need someone from Netflix up here to answer that question. I mean, there's no doubt Netflix have a massive audience, right? So a massive audience could lend itself to be commercialized via advertising.
So
whether or not they're going to do it,
we don't know, but
I don't know.
You think they will?
All I know is that sport is more intrinsically linked to advertising than entertainment.
And they don't have a live sports.
So we've decided to do it because we believe that sport and advertising go hand in hand, more so than entertainment. So whether or not Netflix decide to go down the Hulu route, I don't know.
You don't know. Francis, what do you think? Will they launch next year?
I think we'll see blended models. So you look at mature streaming market, like the audio streaming market and what Spotify has done, and you see their subscription models and also AVOD models. What this means is they perhaps will be able to basically get people at the edge who maybe cannot afford the service at the moment. Also, we have yet to see what the streaming wars have in store for us. Will people switch from Netflix or not? AVOD may come in if they need to prevent churn in the market.
Because next year there will be even more and more streaming services and big names out there. So, and in some markets it will be challenged.
No way.
You think no?
No, with the recent price increases, we saw that the price elasticity or sensitivity of consumers was very low. If they wanted to be profitable, they could raise the rates 75 cents.
So they will be profitable increasing the price, not introducing advertising.
So why complicate things?
Great. According to you, they will not.
I think they will complicate things. I think what we're seeing from our business in the States, we're seeing a lot of subscription fatigue. So a lot of people who've got Netflix and a bunch of other things they subscribe to, and then they're beginning to cut them. So I think they'll look at some kind of Spotify model. So yeah, I think they're definitely looking at it. Whether it's 2020 or not, I don't know.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. You're going to be around for lunch in case there are questions. We have only 45 minutes for lunch because I think the next session starts at 2. Camelia, 2 o'clock. So you have time to eat very quickly and speak to these fantastic panelists here. Thank you very much. Great session today.